All right.
Awesome. So what is a fascinating, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions for this to try to get at maybe like something different each time.
Okay.
What is a fascinating fact about your field of study?
Ooh, a fascinating fact about my field of study. Give me a second to think about that. Can I ask you, do you mean like law generally or my very specific expertise of law?
I mean, really, I know this is an annoying answer, but really either.
Okay.
I would say another way to ask this question is like, what's something that people may be surprised by when it comes to your field of study? Like,
Okay.
I'll give you an example of what the virologist was sharing, and she's not. I don't know. I think she has a specialty in virology, but she's actually an anatomy and physiology doctor, like academic doctor. And she said that what's really interesting about the body is that it's actually always changing and we're always making new discoveries. So people think that the human body and the human systems are sort of already frontiers that have been explored. But the reality is every time she teaches a science class, there's new and updated information. So it's just like an example of how she positioned it.
Okay. Okay. So I could say that that one of the fascinating or the aspects of my field that maybe people don't know about is that what you think of as being a lawyer is only a very small sliver of actually what lawyers do in reality. So people get the idea that a lawyer is what they see on TV, and that they go into courtrooms and represent people or prosecute people, or have big corporate deals. If you're watching a show like a legal show on TV, and the reality is that is only a very small portion of lawyers do that, and that there is a vast, huge amount of work that lawyers do behind the scenes. Lots of lawyers don't ever set foot in a courtroom, and that there's a huge amount of lawyers that are out there. Lawyers sometimes get a bad rap as being just sort of, money hungry, corporate climbing lawyers, and that's not the reality for a huge number of lawyers out there. That lots of lawyers are doing really, really important, really good work out there, and that money is not the foremost thing. Of course, everybody wants to make a living, but it's not the foremost thing on many lawyers' minds.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great. I think a lot of people have that misconception. You're absolutely right. Okay, tell me now, what's kind of a fun fact about your background? I mean, you could even, actually, it's funny, I don't know if we should reveal or if we should talk about you being in Tanzania right now, because I don't know if that's actually problematic from the teaching perspective in Outschool. I would never say anything, but I actually don't know the answer to that. So
I don't think it is, as long as my residency is in the U.S. So, which I keep my residency in the U.S. So, but it's totally fine to not talk about it as well.
No. I mean, clearly my brain went right away to like just you dialing in from Tanzania. That alone is like very interesting. But yeah, you know more than me about the logistics around teaching. But
ask me the question again so I can remember.
Sure. What is a unique fact about your background or a fun fact about your background?
I guess a fun fact about my background, and probably a lot of people's background, is that I didn't necessarily plan to do the work that I did. It wasn't like always a absolute dream of mine to do. I'm so sorry. Maybe did you hear that? Can you hear that? There's a lot of.
I do. Was it a dog?
No, it's Life is crazy in Tanzania. It's trash collectors going by.
Oh.
They don't. Lots of times here, most people here burn their trash, which is really bad environmentally. So there's rarely trash collectors that come by, but about once a month there's a crazy like empty like a bed of a truck, and they just start piling trash on it, and then they just jump on top of it, and then they just go down the road like this bumpy road on the top of all the trash singing. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. So sorry.
No, I mean, I couldn't quite hear what it was, but I heard something.
It's the trash collector. Sorry.
That's interesting. That's your fun fact right there.
Right. Okay, so I'll try again. Okay, so I guess a fun fact is that I didn't really, I guess an interesting fact might be that I always tell people you just don't know where you're gonna land. I didn't go into school at college at 18, 17, 18 thinking I want to be a lawyer. That wasn't my plan at all. And it kind of took me some time. I went through college, and I graduated, and I went to work at first for a teen homeless shelter for a while. And I thought, gosh, I really, really like helping people. I really love this, but I miss kind of using my brain a little bit more. So I went back to grad school in public policy, and then I worked in DC for a little bit in Washington, DC, and I was working on policy in women's healthcare, and I really liked that, and I liked using my brain, but I also felt like I was losing connection with people, where I had been at the homeless shelter, at the teen homeless shelter. I had really, had connection with the population I was serving, and all of a sudden I'm doing this policy work and I'm not really connected to the people very much. And so I was really struggling with kind of I wanted to use my brain, but also really wanted to connect with people and populations and not feeling really removed from the people that I wanted to be helping. And so that sort of led me to the law. So I went back to law school, but even going back to law school, I thought that I would be an immigration lawyer. That's what I kind of went into law school thinking, that I wanted to do human rights and immigration, refugee law in the United States. And then sort of had a really hard time figuring out exactly what I liked the idea of what a human rights lawyer was, but I had no idea, like actually logistically, practically, what does that mean? And so it took me a while to find my niche and my specialty in the law, and to find that I really enjoyed, strangely, international criminal law, where you're prosecuting genocides and crimes against humanity and war crimes and really terrible atrocities that have happened, and that I not that I enjoyed that those atrocities happened, but it was a way that it kind of brought everything together. I was connecting to people that I cared about. I was using my brain really constantly, and I was doing work that I thought was important and helpful, and it made sense to me, where where there was a courtroom, and there were crimes, and there were things that you had to prove, and there were witnesses to speak to. It made sense to me, and so it took me a long time to find exactly what I felt like I was meant to do this. Like, this is what I was meant to do, and this is really important work, and I really feel passionately, and I love my work. But it wasn't something that I knew from the time, so when I talk to my kids, they're teens now, and they have ideas of what they want to be, and I want to encourage those things, but I also don't want them to feel like, if they tell me that they're going to be a veterinarian, that's what they feel like they have to be, because they might, as they start their journey, figure out that's not for them, and there's other things. And I want them to know that there's a big world out there and a lot of flexibility to figure out exactly where you're meant to be in the world,
Awesome. That's great. You answered my next question already, which is great.
Sorry.
which was, did you always know you'd pursue this career? And tell me about the early parts of your path to where you are now. I would say that if you could, on that second one, where it's tell me about the early parts of your past now, I think you covered the early parts, but I think, is there a way for you to kind of tell us, like, so now what I do is,
yeah, and I can even like expand a little bit. When I was when I got into law school, and I kind of thought I want to do this immigration refugee stuff. I had been in Washington, working in Washington, D.C., and I had been volunteering at a refugee clinic there, and had really, thought it was really important work that was being done. And so that's kind of what propelled me, what really made me excited to go back to law school. And so I got into law school, and when you're in law school, you're sort of like, it's like you're a sheep on a path, right? Like there's a path you're supposed to take in law school. And so you go through your first year and everybody takes the same classes, and then you that summer you work at a job. You're supposed to sort of intern at a law firm, and then right at the beginning of your 2L year, your second year, you're interviewing right away at firms, and so that you can get a firm job in the summer between your second and third year, and then that job is going to propel you onto what firm you're going to work for. And everybody's on this path, and so my first summer, I decided, instead of working, that I really wanted to study abroad, because I knew I wanted to do this refugee work. So I did a study abroad program in Europe. In Geneva and Strasbourg, which are really, Strasbourg has the European Court for Human Rights housed at it, and Geneva has the UN, and the branch of the UN that does human rights work is there. So I did that study abroad program, and I was like, wow, this is exciting. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm for sure that I'm on the right path here. And while I was there, I was meeting anybody that came to talk to our class. I would go up to them afterwards and ask them if I could take their card or take their number, if I could possibly take them out for coffee, and they could tell me more about their jobs. I was just trying to, as much as I could, sort of make those connections. And through that process, I ended up with an offer for an internship. This organization had a person sort of back out at the last minute, and they needed an intern to help them out at the Human Rights Council work at the UN in Geneva. And they offered me that to do that, and I really wanted to do it, but it would cut into this beginning of law school for me. So I would have to stay in Europe a little longer and get back to school a couple weeks late, and I was really nervous about that. But I contacted the law school, and they said, okay, that's fine. Talk to your teachers, get your work, and you can come back a couple weeks late. So I did that. So when I got back, my second year of law school, everyone was like in the throes of, suits and business suits and interviews and sign up for interviews for firms. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm late. I have to do this. And so I was, running around trying to sign up and figure out what firms I wanted to, interview with. And all of a sudden, I was like, why are you doing this? You do not want to work at a firm next year. That's not what you want to do with your summer next year. Why are you doing this? And I stopped myself, and it was really hard. It's really hard when everybody else is doing this, and they're all excited, and they're on this path, and who's going to get which firm, and it's so competitive to take yourself out of the competition and be like, I don't want to do this. But I thought, that's not what I want. And so I applied for these UN internships instead. And I got 2 internships for the following summer. I got one to work at the ICTY, which is the International Tribunal for the Former Yugoslavia. And that was in Europe, and it was a well-respected court. They put out really good law, and it was, it would be a really good, interesting move. And then I got another UN internship at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, and that was in Tanzania. and which sounded really exciting and interesting and fun to go down. I had never been to Africa before. I thought that sounds so fun, but the court wasn't quite as well respected, and so I thought it's probably a better career move to go to Europe, but I'm kind of more excited about Africa. And so I went to my sort of mentor and asked her, what do I do? What do I do? And she is amazing. She's now she was my law professor then, and is now still a close friend, but she's now the ambassador for war crimes for the State Department in DC. So she's like such a powerhouse. And she was at that moment too, because she, I was in her office and I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, you just do both. Come on, let's go. And she like stood me up and she walked me down the hall to the dean. And she walked into the dean's office and said, Kirsten has this, this possibility. And so I think she should, take the fall semester and do this internship in Rwanda in the fall semester. And she should do her summer in Europe. And, can she do independent study for that fall? And the dean was like, sure. And, and she was like, and she's on law review. Can she be on law review remotely and just do the work remotely? And the dean was like, sure. And so within like a half hour, I had this like plan, this plan that I probably would never have conceptualized or even, dared to do, except for this woman sort of was just so sure of herself and just, said, of course you're going to do it all. And so I did all of that. And when I got to these internships, everybody there was so excited, to be there. And this was their plan for their career and their life. They were going to be these, lawyers doing work on genocides and crimes against humanity and terrible atrocities that are happening in the world. And they asked me, what I wanted to do, what was my plan. And I was like, this is not my plan. I want to do human rights law. I want to be doing something that is, forward thinking and not, this is so depressing. This is such depressing work, prosecuting terrible atrocities. I want to be, planning cities that have human rights, orientations to them or, things like that. And then it turns out that of all those people I went to law school with, many of them are not doing this work, or went to the internship with. Many of them are not doing this work, but it really stuck for me. Like actually, as I did it, I fell in love with it. I understood it, and it like really solidified for me. So that was a kind of important period of time during law school of really figuring out what I wanted to do. And then right after law school, the UN told me I was going to have a contract, but it's the UN and they're huge and they take forever to process things. And so, I was waiting the summer, I was studying for the bar. I took my bar, I passed my bar. I'm still waiting for this, mythical, contract that's coming sometime, right? And finally I thought, it's never really going to come, and I have law school loans that are going to come due, and I actually need to have a job. So I started applying elsewhere, and at some really, really miserable jobs that I thought, oh my gosh, this is terrible, but I'm going to have to do this. And then lo and behold, the UN came through, and then I have worked at these courts between the International Criminal Court and the Rwanda Tribunal and the Yugoslav Tribunal. I worked for them for quite a long time, kind of going between the courts in different places. So I was in the courtroom for a really long time, every day, but it's not so easy to have small children and be in those courtrooms all the time, every day. It's a really demanding job, and it takes a huge amount of time. So with my kids, I really didn't want to have, such a demanding job that took so much. So I've been really lucky because I have been able to do consultancy work for the UN. So I can take consultancies, and I don't have to be, full-time in a courtroom anymore, but I'm able to still keep doing that sort of work, as well as now I teach law school at a university, and then I kind of lucked into finding out about Outschool as well. So I sort of have my hands on a lot of places, and I get really good quality time with my kids. So I feel like I'm really in a blessed place now because I'm passionate and I love the work that I have, but I get to do it in a way that still allows me all these other passions too. So
awesome. Oh my gosh, you had
Sorry.
such an interesting career and such a wonderful path. What if you had to offer and share one? I know one highlight is probably impossible to. Well, I'm going to challenge you to it. What is the highlight of your career so far?
Okay, I can tell you. The highlight of my career thus far was that I had the most wonderful boss at the International Criminal Court. I worked for the vice president of the court, a wonderful man who I was so lucky because he was from a really different legal system than I was. And he hired me specifically because we came from really different backgrounds and he wanted, to know more about other legal systems, where lots of people got hired because they came from they kind of came from the exact place that the same country that their boss did, and so they weren't really, their boss wasn't really that interested in what they had to say or think. My boss was really interested in what I had to say, and we loved, we could sit and have long debates and talks and legal talks, and his wife would sometimes tell him on the weekend, call Kirsten, because he loved to chat so much about the law, and she was like, I don't want to talk about this so much, please call Kirsten. And so I was really lucky with this boss, but on top of that, he was put on the trial team. So I was on the trial team for the first case to come before the International Criminal Court. So it was the first time that the International Criminal Court had ever tried a case before. It was new, and it was the most exciting time of my life, really, because we were, the International Criminal Court, the law that they put together is, the idea of is that it's taking different legal schools and putting them all together, right? So all these different countries that have different ways, civil legal systems or melodramatic legal systems, adversarial legal systems like we have in the States, and kind of bringing them all together to create this new, truly international law. That's what they say. And so it's like taking pieces of a puzzle out of the puzzle and trying to put them into a new puzzle and see if they all match up. And sometimes they don't, and sometimes they don't work. And if you take a piece of a law out of one system and you put it into this new system, is it still going to be fair? Because does it have all the other pieces of the puzzle around it that protected that piece and made it fair and safe and good to have as a law? If you take it out, does it really work anymore, right? So your brain was just constantly having to think, because we were the first case. So nobody had implemented this law before. So there was all kinds of well, gosh, they didn't tell us in the statute how to do this. We have to figure out how are we supposed to do this and what's fair and what's not fair. And it was the first court ever to involve victims in the court process. So how do you involve victims? They had a legal representative in the courtroom, and how do you involve them without infringing on the rights of the accused person? You want to make sure that their rights are being upheld. And so there's so much that was going on that it was, and it was so big and so momentous, and there were reporters there all the time. And so it was a really, really big deal, and so exciting to be there every day. I loved every second of that time.
That sounds so cool. Wow. I can't even imagine what it must be like to actually combine different legal systems from around the world. I mean,
it was crazy.
There's probably a lot that's in direct conflict with one another.
There really is.
Yeah, that's so. Who is there? This is not part of the interview. I'm just curious. What is your sort of, what do you think that has what country has like the best legal system, you think?
Oh my gosh. I think I am actually strangely partial to the United States. I really like our legal system. Really? I know it's strange, but because I feel like the US, our legal system allows for a lot more flexibility. I mean, we certainly have massive problems. Don't get me wrong. I think we have got really big problems in our legal system currently. But I think foundationally, like the structure of it is actually pretty decent, because it does allow, we really rely a lot on precedent, right? So Supreme Court, so they have to look back to precedent, and all the other courts have to look back. And instead of a lot of romantic dramatic systems, they have so many more statutes and laws than we do, like just books and books and books. But it's also rigid, like you have to fit into that box, and that's all there is to it. And I think that that's where sometimes we have gone astray in our legal system when we've tried to do that. Like 3 strikes you're outlaw in the U.S. in the 90s was well intentioned, but it was ended up being a terrible law that harmed so many people because it didn't allow any flexibility. It was 3 strikes, that's it. You're in jail for life, that's it. And so you ended up with, I remember being in I was kind of doing some work for a public defender's office. And there was a case in there, and I mean, this guy, he was like this 40-year-old dad. He had when he was like 18, he was in LA, Los Angeles. When he was 18, he had like stolen a couple cars, which is not a great thing to do for sure, right? So he had gone to jail for stealing a couple cars, but they hadn't been violent. That he hadn't done it. He had stolen some cars, which he shouldn't have done. But that was like when he was 18, and then he had gotten his life together. He got married. He had kids. He was a construction worker, and he fell upon hard times. It was hard times, and he couldn't get a job, and he hadn't had a job in a long time, and he stole something from a store for his kid's birthday, and he went to jail for life for that. And it was tragic. It was so tragic. And the prosecutor was horrified. The judge was horrified. We were obviously horrified at the public defender's office. The whole system was kind of horrified. And there was nothing any of them could do because there was no flexibility in that law. The judge couldn't do anything. And he felt horrible. Yeah. And so when we do that in our legal system, I think we make big mistakes. But that's how a lot of legal systems are out there. They're really, really rigid. And the beauty of our legal system, when we don't do that kind of thing to it, is that we have this flexibility in our law that allows judges to look more at the circumstances and say, what's really going on here, and gives them some flexibility to sentence people more fairly. We currently have problems doing that, but the foundation is there.
The foundation's right. I mean, is he still in jail, or is he out?
As far as I know, he is still in jail.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. That's terrible. That is like wild. Wow.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, you think, like, he has kids. His kids are now going to grow up, going to visit their daddy in jail, right?
Yeah.
This is not helpful to them. And the studies show, that kids that have parents in jail are so much more likely to end up going to jail themselves. It's like such a cycle, right? So you're like, why would you do this? Like, why? And we're all paying for it, right? Our taxpayer money is paying for this.
I know. I used to work as a tutor, like an in-school tutor. I went to college in New York City, and so I worked as an in-school tutor in schools in East New York, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with East New York at all, but it's one of the poorest parts of New York City. And I had kids. I was part of this organization called Parent Corps, actually, and it was a study actually by the NYU Child Psychology Department, and it was like a sort of 3-pronged intervention. And like half the kids, these preschool kids, had parents in jail, and it was, that's not the experience, the life experience I have with growing up. And so these kids are going through just an unbelievably amount of complex emotions, and it's pretty wild to see them try to process and try to understand something that is just even hard for adults to understand.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was just really. I remember feeling really heartbroken because these kids were trying so hard. You know, they weren't really
Right.
yet hardened by the path that their lives had taken.
Right.
But you could sort of see the writing on the wall with a lot of them that they just didn't have the right
Right.
the right support around them, and you know, with the parent in jail, it's just such
It's
a
awful.
challenge.
Yeah,
But
it's a
anyway,
really big challenge.
I digress. We have one more sort of quick section, and this
Okay.
is the transition to Outschool. So
Okay.
here's I'm going to give you two questions, and then I have one third one, and then
Okay.
we'll wrap it up by me asking you to say, you know, my name is Kirsten
Okay.
Bowman, and I am a blank, and I teach blank on Outschool.
Sure.
That'll be like the end tag.
Okay.
But before we get there, why do you teach on Outschool?
I teach. Okay, so that's a great question. I teach on Outschool. You know, a little bit as a fluke. My kids took some classes on Outschool. They took one class on Outschool, but a novel study class called from the novel Wonder, which is a wonderful book, and I was really impressed with the class. And as I was kind of watching my kids take it, I thought, wow, this is they're learning a lot. This is a really exciting platform. And I kind of started pondering, gosh, I wonder if I could, you know, teach something on Outschool. And you know, for me, I think, and as I have been on Outschool, I am more convinced of this than ever, that young people are not taught some really important areas of civics at an appropriate age, right? That we wait sometimes to learn about things, or maybe we never teach. Maybe you can get through college without ever learning about human rights, right? And I really think it should be a part of a civics education in you know, in every school across the globe, quite frankly. I think that people need to know, not only because when we talk about human rights, people want to know what their human rights are, and absolutely I think that young people should know that human rights exist. They should know what they are, and they should know how to access them, and I think that's really important. But beyond that, I also think that young people need to know that human rights aren't only about what we ourselves should get from the world, but also what we ourselves are obligated to, right? That human rights are things that we get and also things that we give, right? And so I just thought, let me try this out and see. And so I just started with one or two classes, and got really, really excited and loved it. And so now it is for sure really the most fun and hours of my week. And they're also the hours that I think are probably the most important and productive of the, I have 3 jobs. I do work for the UN, I teach law school, and I teach on Outschool. And I think as far as my contribution to democracy, I think that probably the work that I'm doing on Outschool far surpasses anything that I'm doing elsewhere, because teaching young people to care about human rights, I teach debate classes, and we talk a lot in debate classes about how debate is great for, all the things that you can, it's great on a college application, and it's great to argue with your parents about and your friends and learn how to do all of that better. And it's great to go to competitions and win. But ultimately, the reason why we debate and we teach debate and we learn debate is because it is an essential skill in a working, functioning democracy. And so, teaching young people critical thinking skills, human rights education, and how to communicate and to listen effectively and critically and with integrity, I think is doing so much more for our well-being as a society. And so that is why I continue to teach on Outschool, because I feel great passion about doing it. And I feel like like I'm really, leaving a lasting contribution in teaching young people, I think, really important skills that will help us as a society going forward. So that's why.
That's amazing. We're so lucky to have you. Wow. I'm coming off camera because I realize I think the one thing that's hard about me being off camera, and I know you're not looking at me, but just sort of like, I realize you probably think I'm just like sitting here silently, but I'm head nodding and making gestures, okay. Body language that you can't see. So.
Oh, I just lost you.
Which is funny. So I kind of, the next question here was, what do you have to offer students? But I think you really hit on that. The passion that you have for really making sure that kids are taught about human rights, understanding their obligation. I think that really answers that question. And then the final question was really this sort of more nebulous one, like how do you offer next level learning opportunities? So I guess instead of just answering these questions, I'll ask you this. Is there anything that you haven't been able to say or share or convey that you want to convey? Or anything that you kind of thought I would ask you that I didn't end up asking you?
There was something like 30 seconds ago that came to my brain and then it left again. So hold on a second. Let me think. I was gonna say, I don't know if this works in or not, but I was gonna say that what's really, really important to me on teaching on Outschool is to be really careful to not ever teach kids what to think, but instead try to teach students or learners how to think. And that's really important to me. So and sometimes my learners will ask me, well, what do you think about this? Or what, what's your, I teach like current events or, sometimes political issues will come up and they ask me these questions and I try as hard as I can to just say, I want to know what you think about this, because I don't want to, I think it's really, really important to not just try to, spout to them what I think that they should think, and instead to just teach them that their brains are really great out there, and that if they're using their critical analysis and they're thinking it through, that they're going to come to the right answers for themselves. And so that is something that's really, I think, key and important to me when I'm teaching.
That's awesome. I love that you added that. I think that will definitely make the cut. That's a great sentiment. And important and hard. Kids always want to hear, right. What you think. They want that model. But okay, I think my final question here is, I hope the camera is still recording. I had this fear.
I hope so too. I still see it going, so.
Okay, great. The last question is if you could just look at the camera, introduce yourself, name, you don't have to give you can give the exact titles of the classes you teach, or you can mention the subjects, whatever is more comfortable for you. And my name is K Bowman. I am a human rights lawyer and an Outschool teacher. I'm a human rights lawyer and I teach this on Outschool.
Okay. Are you ready for me to do that? Okay. All right. My name is K Bowman, and I am a human rights lawyer, and I teach human rights, civics, and debate on Outschool.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yay, we did it.
I love your Christmas tree, by the way. I love all your Christmas decorations.
Oh my gosh, thank you. My husband really, I don't know if you can see this, I
love it. I see it all. I love it.
It's a little chaotic, but
I'm super jealous of it. I love Christmas, and we don't, here it's not. We're going to the beach. We're going to the beach for Christmas.
Yeah. Is Tanzania primarily Muslim?
It's really half and half.
Oh, okay.
It's something that I love about here, and I love teaching my kids this, that here we hear the call to prayer, I'll hear it, it'll go off in about 10 minutes. And then we also, you'll hear night church services in the neighborhood at the same, often at the same time. It's really 50-50. Muslim people and Christian people are living right next door to each other, and nobody cares. They are friends. They are, they are great neighbors. It is a very, interactive neighborhood, and people accept that. And I love that.
That's awesome. Tanzania is like really on my bucket list. I think I mentioned that to you when we first spoke.
Fantastic.
We were gonna go to Tanzania. I have a good friend who lives in Ethiopia. She's from Ethiopia. We were gonna visit her there, and then go to Kenya, Tanzania, and I think we were gonna try to go to Madagascar, but we didn't do that. It was April 2020. But
Well, don't go to Ethiopia now, although Ethiopia is wonderful and I love Ethiopia. And I would love to take my kids there, but I'm worried about the security situation there. So
yeah, no, it's like it's such an incredible history rich place, and it's just really sad how chaotic it is.
It is, right? Because I mean, you could go to Addis, and Addis is perfectly safe and fine. But like the really like fantastic stuff is really up in the north. You know, these you know, churches carved into the mountains that are so amazing to go to, and they're being destroyed right now, which is like heartbreaking.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But if you ever decide to make it down, you should let me know. So
I will. Oh my gosh. You'll be like first on my
yeah, let us know. We always love having visitors. So
so are you there like
we're here 50-50.
50-50, okay.
Yeah. We keep our house. We have a house in the United States, and we keep our house there. We'll be back there mid-March.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back here midsummer-ish. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And your kids, do they enjoy living in Tanzania?
So part of you know, my kids are I adopted them from Tanzania, so
Oh, cool.
when they were little they lived here, and then we moved back to the States. They moved back to the States when they were very little, so they're very Americanized, like very Americanized.
Okay.
And I worry about that, and I think that that's great, but I also think that there's other things that are important for them to learn about their home country as well. So that was a big impetus for us, you know, kind of doing this 50-50. And my son was super like against it, and like I thought I was gonna have to, you know, tie him to the car getting to the airport. Like he was trying to like leave the car as we were driving to the airport. But and he like didn't speak to me for a good long while when we got here. I think he was really mad because he's older and he's, you know, has his friends, and but I just kind of felt like it's really, really important. And he still misses home, and he still loves his friends, and he still wants to go home, but he has found friends here. And, you know, and there's a lot of, you know, the kids can be a lot freer here than they can, you know, in the States. Like you know, they can go out with their friends without me worrying in a panic about what's going to happen and where they're going to go. And, you know, is there going to be a problem there? And, you know, they can go mountain biking here and kind of be out all day. And it's, you know, there's lots of stuff. There's lots of great stuff. So I think that my daughter's always loved both places. My son, I think, is coming around to it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's important. I think it's really important for him. So.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Wow. What a cool. So how long have you been going back and forth? So is it?
So actually, we haven't gone back and forth from here for very long, because you know, at my law school that I teach at is Uppsala University in Sweden. So we were, so for a long time we were doing 50-50 Sweden and the US. COVID hit, and then we were stuck in the US for a while, but we had come to Tanzania for 6 months right then, and I had decided I want to, you know, end things in Sweden and, you know, really come back to the kids' roots here. The UN in Nairobi is doing a lot of important work, and work that I can get consultancies from. We're looking at a piece of property here. And so, you know, so we've just switched from doing like 50-50 Sweden, the US, to doing 50-50 Tanzania, the US. So,
Wow, cool.
But it's working. It's working. I have faith it will work. So
yeah. You can know, it's amazing. I feel like you can make anything work.
I think you can.
I mean, I know it sounds a little Pollyanna, but I mean, this is not anything compared to what you've done, but my husband and I RV'd around the country for like almost years, and we were actually in a long distance relationship before that, and then we ended up getting married. So clearly, it worked out.
Because you were in a really small space together for a while. You figured out you liked each other.
Oh yeah, he was in San Francisco, I was in New York, and we were like, okay, let's move into like 40 square feet. Humans are nothing if not flexible, you know?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I really think it's true that you can make things work if you put your mind to it.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Like when people are like, I could never do that, I'm like, how can you say that?
Right.
Like, how can you say you can never do something?
Right.
Like, you've never even tried.
Yeah. This one I hear all the time. This one I always tell, like, people would always say, like, interns like would say, oh, I really want to get a job at the U, and how do I do it? And I was like, well, first just apply, right? Because lots of the jobs I got, I think I was like not the most qualified person out there for, but probably people who were way more qualified than I was just didn't apply for it, right?
Yeah, I know. Wild.
Right. So you just gotta try. Like, I'm always like, just try. The worst thing that happens is it doesn't work out, right?
Right.
Even when we were coming down here, my mom was like, well, what happens if it doesn't work? And I was like, well, then we'll come home. Like, that's what's right. Yeah. Like, then we come home. It doesn't work, right?
Yeah, we're trying to tell ourselves that right now. We're looking for a house. And I've lived in New York basically for 16 years. And
are you moving to San Francisco now?
No, we're looking at either Philadelphia or Denver.
Okay, wow.
And I have family in New Jersey. He has family in the West Coast. He's from Oregon. So it's like, we have a lot to like navigate distance wise.
Right.
And it's one of those things where I'm like, just because we buy a house doesn't mean like, I had these
That's
visions
right.
of being like 80 dying in the house or something. And like, I think that's like probably not the right way to think about it.
No, I know, but it's so you of course, like, it's a big commitment, right? And so big commitments are scary. But the truth is that you can, like, I think that has been like a major benefit to me in my life, is to figure out that I always have a choice. Like, and I didn't figure it out until I was in law school. I was studying for the bar. I was in New York because I took the bar in New York. And I was at a friend's apartment for a couple months just studying. And it was the night before the bar, and I was like in a panic. Like, I was like physically not doing well, right? And I was like, I cannot actually do this. And then I thought, like, okay, Kirsten, so what's the worst thing? Don't do it. Like, if you really can't do this, just don't take the test. No one's forcing you to like walk out the door and take the test. The worst thing that's going to happen is that you're going to get a job that, you needs a law degree but doesn't require the bar. So like, that's the worst thing that's going to happen in your life. And so if you don't want to do it, don't do it, right? And like, when I knew it was my choice of whether or not to do it, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll try and do it, right? Like everything calmed down. Like,
yeah.
Right?
The mental shift is, it really is,
yeah.
I wish that's something I learned earlier.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, like I'll never forget being in like college, being like, oh my gosh, I failed this midterm. Like, I am
the end of
dead.
Life. Right, exactly. And it's just not like, when you just have to like calm down. And when you just start to think like everything is a choice, like there's always a choice. When you start to feel like there's no like way out and you're like trapped into something, it's just terrifying. But if you can always think like, this is just a choice and I can always make another one, then things seem like way calmer.
Totally. Well,
anyway, that's the therapy. That's our therapy session for today, right?
I know. There we go. I'm ready to talk my Tuesday. Oh my God. Take it. We're actually going to the Colbert show tonight.
Oh, how fun!
We're so
That's
excited,
so
and we found out that Aaron's playing, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I never would have like gone to see. I'm not like not a fan, but seeing him in this small little studio would be so cool.
Yeah. Oh, how fun! That sounds really fun. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much. So just send that footage over, as soon as you can. I know that, like, I don't know if upload, download fees are tricky for you. So
yeah, I have no idea what I'm going to do now, but I'm going to stop it, and then I'm going to figure out how it works. Right?
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. The way that might be easiest for you is to upload it to Google Drive and then share it with me on Google Drive.
Okay.
I'm open to other tactics, but that will work.
Okay, I will definitely try that one. That sounds good. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
You
Enjoy your
too.
day.
Bye.